Welcome back to another video. As you can see by the title, we are grading every NBA team's 2023-2024 NBA season. Today is Friday, game 4 of the finals, as the Celtics are up 3-0, which means they are going to be the champions unless somehow they blow a 3-0 lead, which is the only way any of my ratings would change, is the Celtics if they blow a lead, which has never happened in the NBA. So the likelihood they're champions already is pretty fucking high. So because of that, obviously we're making this video now before the season is officially over. And also quickly before we get started, I will be reacting to the Celtics versus Mavericks on my reaction channel. Most likely I'll post it and not on here, as I just started it, and I'll link it in the description. As any other reaction, content, I probably will be start putting there instead of, putting on this channel, as it's going to be mainly, this is a sports channel. Obviously my reaction content is going to be also sports too, probably, but, stuff that's aside from sports. And it's a lot going to be, like Twitch VODs when I'm streaming on Twitch. So if you want to check me out on Twitch when I'm live, you could also check it out. Probably will link it in the description below. But yeah, so that will probably be on my reaction channel if you care about that. But yeah, let's get started. So first team is the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls, I'm giving them an F. Quickly also, before we kind of, go through every other team, this is all based off how the team was managed. Did they take the right steps for their franchise? Did they over or, under exceed their expectations? So because of that, to start off, we're going with the F right now for the Bulls. I think this team needed to blow it up at the deadline for sure, as they literally, I think, they should have did it the offseason. They should have did it the season before even. And they still just haven't done it yet. They still have yet to do any, moves to blow up this franchise. We kind of heard, some rumors, at least, with Zach LaVine possibly getting traded. But then he got injured. He was out for the season. So that didn't happen. They ended up making no moves at the trade deadline. Another year where they ended up, not making the playoffs. The only thing that was actually good for this team this year is Kobe White was, obviously a most improved candidate. And I think he should have got it, honestly. As obviously Tyrese Maxey was great. But I think it's a lot more expected that he was going to take that, jump in development. I feel like with Kobe White, it was a lot more of someone that you don't really expect, and I think that's why he should have got most improved, as it was someone that, was actually, I think, the most improved player. So, yeah, they're getting an F. Obviously, I think they were just managed terribly. Bad season. Should have blew it up. They didn't. But, yeah, second, we have the Rockets. They're getting an A. Amazing season by them. Obviously exceeded my expectations. I don't know, a lot of other people, some people thought they would make the playoffs, some people thought they wouldn't. They obviously ended up not making the playoffs, but I think this team still had a really, really good year. And maybe this is too aggressive. Maybe they could be in a B rather than an A, but I'm going to give them an A because, I think a lot of their young players have played really good. They lost Alperen Sengun, obviously, for the rest of the season after he tore, I think it was his meniscus or MCL, ACL, something like that. I think it was his MCL or meniscus. I don't think it was his ACL. But he tore something, and obviously he was out for the season. But they had a lot of development with this team. And now they also, with that, are adding with, a top pick in this draft with number 3. And, I think they're going to look to trade it. But regardless, that's obviously for the offseason. But as the season as a whole, I think they took the right steps for their franchise, so I'm going to give them an A. Next is the Raptors, and I'm going to give them a C. I mean, I feel like the only reason why I'm not giving this a D is, yeah, they had a really bad record. But I think the only reason why I kind of give it a C is I feel like they actually chose a direction with this team. Rather than kind of staying in, kind of like the Bulls, of just keeping the same team and then it just doesn't work out and they just keep the same team. They traded Pascal Siakam, obviously, before he becomes a free agent, which is obviously really good because if he ended up, pushing free agency and then he leaves in free agency and you lose him for nothing, then obviously that sucks a lot. So they traded him. They got a decent return. I think Bruce Brown, they got who they could maybe use to trade for some more picks. But yeah, I think they had an okay season, at least for the fact of obviously no one expected them to be good. I think Scotty Barnes had a really good season, which you obviously like to see is he's, one of the future pieces of the team. They got R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel quickly in the OG Anunoby trade, which I think they actually won that trade. So yeah, I think they had some good moves. I think they took the right steps, chose kind of a direction for this franchise to go younger, kind of rebuild, retool the roster, and I do like that for them. Next is the Pelicans, and I'm gonna give them a C. The reason I'm giving them a C is kind of just I feel like they've been in the same spot the last few years and nothing's really changed. Like they've had the same team, they haven't really made too many moves, and the same situations I feel like keep happening with this team. Make the playoffs, Zion doesn't play, he gets injured, and you get eliminated first round. And now I think it's even worse. Brandon Ingram's likely going to get traded because of his contract. And overall, I think it was just an okay season for them. They didn't, I don't think, take a step to really upgrade this team to go to like a B or something. So I think it's just a C season, mid-season, which is what C is. So yeah. Next is the Timberwolves. We're giving them an A. Obviously, took an insane jump as they were the first seed for quite a bit in the West. And I didn't even expect this at all out of this team. I mean, Anthony Edwards, obviously, we know about Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, a lot of those other guys, aside from, Cat and Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley, some of the veterans, a lot of those young guys, they took a lot of steps. Anthony Edwards, like I said, Jaden McDaniels, they have Sixth Man of the Year with Naz Reid. And overall, went pretty deep in the playoffs, obviously, losing in the conference finals. But I think, they can now build on top of that. And I think it's definitely something where, if I'm a Timberwolves fan, I would, definitely be looking back at the season. I would think it's a really successful season, even if you didn't win a championship. For the Trailblazers, maybe I'll get back to that, as we could do that kind of maybe later on. Because I don't know. I have to actually really think about this, as I don't really know what the Trailblazers season was like in terms of rating it. It's obviously, I don't think, a high rating. So, anyways, for the Nuggets, we're going to give them a B. Obviously, they didn't end up winning another championship, which as a championship, team, that's obviously the goal. But I think, they just came off winning a ring. You can't really have a ring every year. So, it's like, I still think they had a really good season. They had basically the same team. At least all the key pieces. And I think they had a really good season. But, took a little bit of a step back, obviously, from, winning a championship. But they're overall still a really, really good team. So that's why I'm giving them a B. Next is the Thunder. And I'm giving them also an A, as there's actually quite a bit of A's we're going to be giving out, it looks like. And yeah, the Thunder. I mean, really, really good year. They ended up as the first seed. Chet was a rookie. He played really good. Shea, obviously, you've seen Shea, potential MVP, candidate this year. And yeah, this team's really, really young. They still have all their draft picks. They just had also a season where they were the first seed. Played pretty good in the playoffs. Overall, I think, you can't give them a lower rating than an A. It makes no sense to me. Maybe if you have some reason to have an argument for B, I don't know. I think this team just had way too good of a year. So yeah, next is the Grizzlies, where we're giving them an F. But honestly, it's if any Grizzlies fans are in here, don't get mad at that, because obviously I understand the circumstances. So I don't know. You can't really I feel like the Grizzlies, out of all teams here, you can't really give a solid grade for. Because their expectations were obviously to be good. They've been a playoff team the last few years, but they didn't have their team. They didn't have their team. Maybe you can give them an argument for honestly D, because of, the draft pick of Gigi Jackson and how he played for them. So at least you got something out of this season. But overall, I mean, it was just a really rough season for them, and I feel bad, honestly, if I was, anyone who's like a diehard Grizzlies fans. You know, it obviously sucks, but you have to give them an F just because it sucks. You didn't have, Ja Morant. Basically, your whole team was injured at some part of the season. Um, so yeah, overall, it was tough. But yeah. So next is the Mavericks. We're gonna give them an A. I didn't see this team going to the finals at all. Like if you told me this early on in the season, but then they had a really good trade deadline, and I think the trade deadline also really helps boosting this to the A. But obviously, for a team that I didn't think was gonna make the finals, for them to make the finals, I have to give them an A. Um, they obviously exceeded expectations. And so that for that reason, we're giving them an A. Obviously, they're going to lose probably unless somehow they came back from 3-0. But overall, still amazing season. And they still have, obviously, a young player in Luka Doncic that they're building around. So they'll be fine. Next is the Spurs. And the only reason why I'm not going to give them an F and instead I'm going to give them a D is Victor Wembanyama. The only bright spot really of this team, I mean, you have a couple other pieces around him, but overall, he's the only thing going right now for the team, and he's the only reason why I'm not giving them an F. You having Victor Wembanyama alone is not going to get you an F. But yeah, next is the Phoenix Suns, as we're going to give them a D. You could possibly even make an argument to give them an F, but I think this team, they made the trade for Bradley Beal. I didn't think it was gonna work. Also, like I didn't think it was gonna work. With the whole just overall how the team's built. They had no depth, and Bradley Beal, I feel like maybe is not as good as people kind of thought he was because he was playing on a Wizards team where he was the main option. Now is the third option. Seeing how he played in the series against the Timberwolves, it was not a very good series for him. Let's just say that. But yeah, obviously, this team has a lot of players that I think are in win now mode, and for you to go out and have a season where you get eliminated first round and you weren't even a high seed, it's just not a good season for them at all. So that's why I'm giving them a D. Especially with the trades I think they made. I feel like it's like you don't have anything going. You don't have picks. You traded all your picks away. Overall, I just think it was just overall really bad for them. Next is the Clippers, and I'll give them a B. Maybe you can even make an argument for C. Is there another team that's, I think, trying to win a championship? But I think the James Harden trade was good. You had a healthy Kawhi this year for the most part, obviously up until kind of the playoffs. But overall, you had a healthier Kawhi. You had a good record. They had a good season. Obviously, maybe you can make an argument for a C, as they are another team that a lot of relatively older players trying to win rings, kind of in that win now mode, but they can't find a way to get it done. But I think the James Harden trade definitely helped them out, made them a better team. And in seasons past, I would maybe give them a C. So in this season, I kind of think I would have to give them a B because I think they got better from past years. But overall, they still couldn't get it done. So that's why, if anything, the max they can get is a B. Like I said, maybe you can give them an argument for C. Next to the Warriors, I'm going to give them a D. Another team trying to win, or at least maximize this window where they still have Stephen Curry. And you saw a massive regression from Andrew Wiggins, and he's getting paid a lot of money. Klay Thompson, every comment section you go on Instagram, if you look at Bleacher Report, any like Overtime, any sports media thing on Instagram or almost anywhere on the internet, the thing you will see is Klay Thompson shot 0 for 10. It's all you're gonna see. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like they didn't make like a trade at the deadline. They saw a massive regression from Andrew Wiggins. Their team was really bad this year. Chris Paul, it almost felt like wasn't in the league. I know he was out for a little bit with injury, but in the games he even played, you just didn't feel Chris Paul on the court. Like it was I don't know, it just didn't feel like, you know, Chris Paul was even on the team. Um, the only thing that I guess was pretty good for them is obviously Curry's still great. And I think, the rookies that they had this year were really good. Brandon Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis were both really, really good for them as they basically took minutes away from a lot of the other guys on the team. So I guess that's the only thing that was really, really nice for them. So obviously we'll have to see what they do in the offseason. But overall, I think it was a really bad season for them. That's why I'm giving them a D. Next is the Pistons, and you have to give them an F. I mean, they went on the longest losing streak that I've seen in my life. And then also, it's just the simple fact of obviously no one probably expected them to be a good team this year or make the playoffs, but you still expect some type of progression in a rebuilding team, and they haven't had that. They've been in a rebuild for so long, and you haven't seen progression. Maybe this year I was thinking, yeah, they're not going to be a playoff team, but they're still going to be a team that they're going to take, some steps in the right direction. They're going to start winning a little bit more games, and that didn't happen. So yeah, you have to give them an F. They've been stuck in a rebuild, and then now this year, even with how bad they did, they couldn't even be rewarded with a top 3 pick. So, it sucks for them, obviously, but yeah, simply an F. Next is the Kings, and you could honestly argue, I think, them even had a D, but I'm giving them a C. I feel like that would be too aggressive to give them a D. But yeah, I mean, Sabonis had a really, really good year. But I feel like overall, worse than they were last year, and they didn't make any trades either at the deadline, as I feel like Harrison Barnes, I thought for sure was going to be someone that could have got traded, or just make some kind of move that really upgrades their team, if they want to have a true chance of competing. And I feel like that's why I'm putting them at a C, is they didn't really take any steps to progress this team. They had a good year last year, and if they wanted to, build on that, I feel like they had to make either some kind of move, whether it was a free agent signing, trade, something like that. I thought they have to make a move if they want to, keep competing, especially being in the West. The West has a lot of good teams. I mean, if you look at some of these grades, West team, West team, West team, West team, West team, West team, West, West. I mean, a lot of these good teams in the league are in the West. If you want to compete, you have to, make some moves to make that happen. And I feel like the Kings just didn't capitalize on that. That's why I'm giving them a C. Next is the Cavs, and I mean, I feel like you could argue this so many different ways with this team. You could give an argument that they had a B season. You can give an argument they had a D. I'm giving them a C. Obviously, I think they had a pretty good year. Obviously, they lost, Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs, which obviously sucks. But yeah, overall, I think they had just an okay season. I feel like they've another team where for the past few years it's kind of been relatively the same, or at least the last 2 years with Donovan Mitchell. But yeah, I feel like this team still has to kind of figure out, I don't know, this offseason might be interesting for them. We've heard a lot of rumors with Darius Garland, with Jared Allen. And I feel like Evan Mobley hasn't took really a step to really improve since his, rookie season. I feel like he's been relatively the same player. We've seen a little bit of it in the Celtics series, without Donovan Mitchell. But I think, I feel like it's just another team kind of like the Kings, where I feel like they've been the same team as they were last year. Didn't really take any step to get better. So I'm just leaving them in the C. And then obviously we're giving the Celtics an A. They will be the champions. And so because of that, you can't give them a lower grade. They literally completed what everyone wants to do. And also, even if they didn't, I feel like the only way, now that they're up 3-0, then I would have to give them a lower rating. But before that, just making the finals, I think they had obviously really good trades. The Kristaps trade, I think they literally scammed the Wizards. They literally got, and I think it was like a 3-team trade with the Grizzlies, but they got 2 first-round picks and Kristaps. they got a lot of value. They only gave up like Marcus Smart, Danilo Gallinari coming off an ACL tear, stuff like that. I think they just got an overall really good package. They had the Drew Holiday trade. I think they made the right trades. They already had an amazing team before that, and they just added to it and made it even better. So I think they definitely, obviously, they have to have an A. They're gonna win the championship. And yeah, so next is the Philadelphia 76ers. Another team where it's a little more interesting, as Joel Embiid, obviously the injury plays a big role in like not really knowing where to really put this. Obviously I think Tyrese Maxey's season alone makes it to where you can't give them a D. I feel like Tyrese Maxey, the way he played, at least you have something in that. Joel Embiid was still amazing in the time he did play, but I feel like they traded James Harden away. The return wasn't the craziest return, and overall I feel like they had an okay season, but they haven't, again, another team where they haven't taken a step forward. But I feel like it was harder for them. They didn't have Joel Embiid for a lot of the season. They had a pretty good record without him, or with him I mean, and then without him they were really bad. So obviously this offseason will be big for them, but I'm just gonna give them a C. A lot of teams I feel like are kind of in that C rating. But anyways, next is the Hornets, and I'm gonna give them an F. Another team kind of like the Pistons, where they've been in a rebuild and they just have had no progress. A big part of that has been LaMelo, obviously not being able to stay healthy, which sucks. And the only reason you can make an argument for a D is I feel like they made some decent trades. I think at the deadline, I like the acquisition of Trey Mann. And also, Brandon Miller was really, really good for them. So, at least from your draft pick, maybe that you could say they're a D because of that. But I think they had an F season. Obviously another team kind of been stuck in this rebuild. So, whatever. Next is the Wizards, as we're going to give them also an F. Kind of like I was talking about the Porzingis trade. I think the Wizards, lost that trade. Also, the Jordan Poole situation, not good. Or at least nothing like anyone expected it to be. And overall, I think their overall return for their trades that they made were not that good. And they also, in general, just had a terrible season. So, I feel like there's nothing higher you can give them than an F. Like, they didn't do anything good. The rookie Bilal Coulibaly, he looks pretty nice, but I feel like it's not good enough to bring you up to a D alone just from him. And no one expected him to be good, but obviously I feel like they didn't have, obviously, a good season at all. And yeah, so next is the Magic, and I'm going to give them a B. Obviously, I think this is definitely a team you can give an A, but I'm just going to be a little more kind of conservative with it, as we already have a decent amount of A's, and there probably will be maybe another A in here. So yeah, I'm giving them a B. They had a really good season. Obviously progressed a lot from last year, as their team also still really, really young. Saw progression from a lot of their players. Jalen Suggs became a lot better on offense, as we already knew he was good at defense, but his offense got a lot better. Paolo got better. Franz Wagner, he still, I think, improved. Not as much as I think Jalen Suggs and, Paolo Banchero. But overall, I think this team had a really good year. Obviously, really look forward to what they do in the offseason as they continue to make the steps to try to, make them a competing team. But I feel like for a young team that, making the playoffs in general was really good for them. They had a good series with the Cavs. Potentially really could have made the second round. So I think because of that, you have to give them at least a B. They had a really good season. Next is the Heat. And I feel like this is a team where you can possibly give them a D or a C. Right now I have them at C. Maybe I'll think about a D. Jaime Jaquez was really good for them, so at least there was that. But overall, another team kind of like I was saying with some of these other teams, they've been in the same position that they haven't been able to get over for the last few seasons. They've had relatively the same team. They made the Terry Rozier trade. I think it was a pretty decent trade, especially for what they gave up. And then also, I mean, the only thing that I feel would maybe make them a D rating rather than a C is the fact that a lot of people were talking about the whole Damian Lillard situation of them trying to trade for Dame, and they just ended up not doing it. And I feel like stuff like that, not capitalizing on, makes a big difference. As you know, maybe that trade could have possibly moved them up, as they made at least the right, move to accelerate them into trying to win a championship. But I'm just going to give them a C. I feel like they had an okay season. Obviously, in the playoffs, they played the Celtics first round without Jimmy Butler, so they couldn't really do much about it. But I feel like, a team that's been in the same situation for quite a bit, you have to kind of give them a C. At least they made moves to try to do something. So yeah, next is the Hawks. I'm going to give them an F. They didn't make any move at the deadline. Had a really, really bad season. Obviously, I feel like part of it was also, Trae Young was out for a bit. Obviously, if he was, not out for a bit, it could have maybe changed a little bit of where their seating was when it came to the play-in. But overall, not a good year for them. The only good thing that's going for them right now possibly is, you still have some talent on the team, and you have the first pick. But yeah, they didn't make any moves at the deadline. Maybe it was a smart decision, as maybe they didn't get the right offer for DeJounte Murray, and they think the offseason they can get a better offer. So maybe I don't mind it as much, but I feel like there was other moves they definitely could have done. Clint Capella, I feel like doesn't make sense on that roster as much anymore. Especially now with them having the first pick, as they could get Alex Sarr even more so. And yeah, overall, I think they just didn't have a good season at all. This team, I feel like, they had that 1 year where they made the conference finals, that kind of fluke year, and then ever since then, they just haven't been able to really, show signs of being a good NBA team, consistently at least. So yeah, next is the Pacers. I'm going to give them an A. Really, really good season. They made the conference finals. Yeah, they obviously played, the Bucks and the Knicks, who were, the next two teams we have, where they didn't play them with, Giannis. Dame was out for a little bit of the series. Jalen Brunson, they lost. They already didn't have Julius Randle. But overall, they still had a really, really good season. I thought this was a team that was going to be a team that definitely was going to be like a lottery pick team. As they I thought they were going to kind of play it like kind of safe and cool and just, have the season go on and just whatever happens. But instead, they were kind of aggressive. They made the move for Pascal Siakam. Aaron Nesmith had a really good year for them. Overall, Andrew Nembhard was also pretty good once, Tyrese Halliburton was out in that Celtics series. And overall, I think this team is really, really young. They have a lot of pieces on the team. They also, I think, have a pretty good amount of cap space, or maybe not as much after they sign Pascal Siakam back, likely. It's going to take a decent amount of their money. But overall, I feel like this team definitely took the right step to accelerate them in their rebuild that, I thought they were a lot further behind in. I thought this was going to take a lot more years for them to, start being a contender. And maybe they actually already are a team that, in the East at least, is one of the top teams, could be a contender. Next is the Milwaukee Bucks, as I'm giving them a D. Maybe you could say it's a little too aggressive and they could get a C. But I feel like with this team, I feel like the trade they made, you see the impact with Jrue Holiday on the Celtics. I just felt this trade made no sense. The Dame trade, I'm saying. Similar to the Bradley Beal trade, I feel like I just didn't like the pairing. I didn't like Damian Lillard going to the Bucks. I just think that it was going to make their defense really bad, and it did. Obviously, their circumstances in the playoffs kind of sucked. You didn't have Giannis. But overall, I feel like this season for them, they had a good record, but it was in the East that was really, really weak this year. They fired their coach, Adrian Griffin, around the All Star break, and they hired Doc Rivers, which I felt made no sense either. So I don't know. I feel like they just didn't really do anything that was good, like at all. I mean, obviously their record was still good, but they want to win a championship, and without them winning a championship, and I think them having a team that looked honestly not that good this year. I mean, again, the record was pretty good, but out of a true contender, I think their defense was just terrible. Um, I don't really like the fit of Damian Lillard on the team that much. I think it would have made more sense of him going to the Heat or something. But yeah, so that's why I'm giving them a D. But maybe it's too aggressive. You could definitely, I think, give them a C. The next is the Knicks, another team we're giving an A. Amazing season out of them. I did not expect Jalen Brunson to be as good as he was this year. And just overall, the team as just in general was really, really good. You know, in literally the whole playoffs, they had no Julius Randle. Mitchell Robinson was out for quite a bit in the NBA season. So yeah, you have obviously a lot of injuries that kind of happened with this team, and they still dealt with it, and we're a really, really good team. And yeah, just overall, really, really good season. They have 2 picks in the first round this year, which I don't know what they do with it, but obviously that's not really what matters right now since we're talking about this season. But they had a really good year that I think they could definitely build on. They still have a lot of capital, I think, to if they want to make a trade for like a star player, they have a lot of capital to make that move. And someone like Julius Randle, who they clearly were able to kind of succeed without him. If they're trying to get like a superstar player, I feel like Julius Randle even adds more to it if they were thinking about, moving on from Julius Randle in that trade to get like a superstar player. But overall, really fun team to watch. I think, in general, they had a really good season, so they have to get an A. Next is the Nets, which I don't know. I'm going to personally give them a D. Now, obviously, I could see if you don't think the same, but I think for this team, it's more so about the direction of this franchise. They kind of refuse to trade like Mikal Bridges for picks. They already don't have their picks from, some of the trades they made, the James Harden trade. They don't have their picks. So with a team like that, you either have to get picks in return so you could at least draft young talent, or you have to make moves to make this team a competing team. And I feel like they did neither. And they also, with their young players that they had this year, they didn't play them until towards the end of the season. Obviously, Dariq Whitehead, he tore his ACL, so he couldn't. But Noah Clowney, you didn't really see him getting minutes till later on the season. I feel like a team like this, if you're going to try to, rebuild a team, you have to play your young players. It makes sense to play your young players. I just think they didn't take any right steps for this team. And obviously maybe it's a little bit too aggressive because, record-wise, I didn't expect them to be better, but I feel like it's more so about the management of this team is that I feel like they should do something. Like, from the rumored trades I've heard from Mikal Bridges, 4 first-round picks, you're declining for him. That's insane. And so it's like, I don't know, you don't have draft capital, so it's like, what do you do to rebuild this team then? Because, it's not like the Brooklyn Nets are a team that people are jumping to want to sign with in free agency. So I don't know what this team's going to do. So for that reason, that's why I'm giving them a D. The Lakers, I'm going to give them a C. I think you have an argument for a D. The Nuggets simply just beat them the last 2 years in the playoffs. But I think they had an okay regular season. I feel like D'Angelo Russell had a really, really good year for them. Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura, I think, definitely took kind of a step back. And I feel like maybe for that reason, I mean, you could possibly argue them with a D because they are a team that, I mean, LeBron James obviously, like, the next few years of his career are his last years. Every year he's trying to win a ring, and it's literally a ring or a bust for him every season from now on. And they had the same team. They ran it back. Understandably, they kind of quickly assembled that team at the deadline last year. So obviously, maybe some more chemistry and playing with each other in the off season and stuff like that makes this team obviously better. They kind of thought, but I think Darvin Ham should have got fired a long time ago. So actually, instead of a C, we're gonna move him to a D. I feel like it just could have been a way better season. I mean, I think the management wasn't that good in terms of Darvin Ham. Some of the free agent acquisitions, they just didn't really have too much impact. And overall, I just think, a team like this, another team that's trying to win a championship, if you don't win a championship, it's basically a bust of a season. So I'm going to give them a D. And that's coming from a Lakers fan. I am a Lakers fan, and I'm giving them a D because I just think you have to win a ring. Next is the Utah Jazz. I'm going to give them a B. I feel like for their expectations, I think they had an okay season. Maybe you can give them a C. And I feel like the main reason why I would give them a B is for the simple fact of Keontae George, I think, was a really, really good pick. And they know they're in a rebuild situation. And for that reason, like someone like Keontae George that you find in the draft, it's really good to build with your team. But actually, at the same time, I might move him back to C, just because I feel like Walker Kessler kind of had a little bit of slight regression from, his rookie season. And I feel like some of the older guys on this team, they could have moved on from, and they really didn't. Jordan Clarkson, I feel like you could have got something out of him. You should possibly have looked to trade him maybe. And I feel like if they're going to want to rebuild this team, maybe it's the right decision to kind of jump to either complete rebuild or kind of push quickly to accelerate this team into winning. And I feel like right now they're like one of those teams that's rebuilding where it's like they're not too bad to be like one of the bottom teams in the league, but they're not too good to really compete. So yeah, I don't know. I would give them maybe a C. Like I said, maybe a B. As I still think they had a relatively decent season. Their draft picks I do like and stuff like that. And then next is the Trailblazers, and I'm gonna have to give them a D. Maybe like a D. Honestly, and the main reason why is I think just overall, everyone knew they were gonna be in a rebuild. I think the Jeremy Grant contract they gave in the offseason made no sense. And so maybe that's a reason why I'm also giving them a D, is partially from that. But overall, your return from the Damian Lillard, trade, and from kind of being in that Drew Holiday, or it was like a 3-team trade. It was, they got Malcolm Brogdon, they got Robert Williams. You know what I mean. Obviously Robert Williams was out the whole season, but overall, I feel like the return wasn't that crazy. And Scoot Henderson, he had an okay season, but I feel like he didn't have that crazy of a year to where it's like, showed a lot. And with some of your other young guys, I feel like none of them really took like really that many steps to progress that much as a player. DeAndre Ayton, we seen how that went. He did not look, towards the end of the season he looked a lot better, but overall he did not look that crazy good. So yeah, I'm giving them a D, and obviously that's just me, I think, being a little more aggressive just because we have so many C's already. Definitely say you could put them at like a C just because we know they were in a rebuild. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Obviously, any of the bad teams, you have a bad season, it's hard to give them a higher rating unless something at least goes good for them. So because of that, we're going to give them a D. And since that's the last team, we have a complete list with, the A's being the Rockets, the Timberwolves, the Thunder, the Mavericks, Celtics, Pacers, and Knicks. And then I have in the B grade the Nuggets, the Clippers, and the Magic. So only 3. And then at C, we have the Raptors, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Cavs, the 76ers, the Jazz, the Heat. D, we have the Spurs, the Suns, the Warriors, the Bucks, the Nets, the Lakers, and the Trailblazers. Then F, we have the Bulls, the Grizzlies, kind of like a DNP. Not going to lie. I feel bad for you Grizzly fans. And then we have the Pistons, Hornets, Wizards, and the Hawks. And maybe, like I said, I'm being aggressive. Maybe you can move up the Cavs to a B. Maybe some of these other teams you can move around. But yeah, so kind of just what I went with. This is how I feel about for every team season. Y'all let me know how you feel, either your favorite team or just a team in general in the league and how they did. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.